And there we got it. All right. All right, all you wonderful boys and girls, men and women, welcome to Mission Critical Podcast. This is a special podcast, episode 11. And Redbeard and I will explain what we mean by special here in a second. I'm just going to start off with something that just happened right before we started recording, which is my coin rack fell off the wall and shit is everywhere. So as Jeremy pointed out, he's like, we just got to fight through it, man. We just got to power through it. And we're your hosts tonight. I'm Mark and
I am Redbeard.
Whoop, whoop. Okay. As I said, we got a little something different we're going to do here tonight. And I think the title of tonight's podcast is going to be Evil is Winning. I'm not sure. We'll maybe tweak that title, but
we'll determine that by the end of this.
Yeah. You are a little bit soft quiet on the ears. Is your mic good?
It should be good.
Oh, no, there you go.
I just might have to raise my decibels a little bit.
Yeah, maybe you just need to lay off and have some more, or I was going to say lay off the coffee, but that wouldn't happen. That's not it at all. And that's never going to happen. But all right, here we go. Jumping into the meat of this. This is going to be a shorter podcast.
No.
I think it's going to be pretty self-evident once we start talking about why we decided to do the podcast tonight the way we're going to do it. A quick little thing. This was going to be part 2 of the dirty civilian versus we're here from the government and we're here to help crowd. The individual we wanted to be in that podcast is doing the right thing, and because he's still in uniform and he's talking to his PAO, his public affairs officer. He wants to make sure that he's not going to get himself in trouble. And this kind of segues into, evil is winning. So again, you've heard me say it. I don't care if you're Christian, Muslim, Hindu. I don't care what it is. But if you're a good person, you do realize that there's something called evil out there. Now, maybe you just define it in different ways, but there's evil and there's good and there's evil in the world. So my friend is doing it the right way, the way you would expect a good person to do. But it kind of just, as I was just thinking about just saying, hey, this isn't what we plan to do tonight. But, he's doing it the right way. And it makes me think of some videos that we saw from last year of other people in uniform. In one video, basically threatening and saying that if you think you're going to stand up for your freedoms and if we're coming around and if there's some type of, civil unrest or whatever reason, martial law. And if I tell you to get inside and you don't get inside, well, bang, bang, or whatever she did. I don't think anything happened to her. And then more recently, we had another soldier in uniform talking about, the Roe v. Wade decision and just going off. They didn't talk to their public affairs officer. They didn't go to the PAO and get clearance. They just went and did it.
On an interesting note, for any of the female listeners that happen by, I'm very curious, especially if you serve in the military. What's your opinion on this? Because most of these disgruntled people tend to be women. And I'm not picking them out in particular. It's just the trend of where these videos are coming from. So if we have any female military personnel and you're watching this and you like the content, I'm very curious to know what your disposition is on that. I just wanted to throw that in there because it's, from seeing it and hearing it from a female perspective, it might be kind of interesting. So.
Hey, I think that coffee has mellowed you out. You should stop drinking. Yeah, your decibel level is way low here tonight. I don't know what it is.
Well, I will get louder, damn it.
There you go. Bring that up to 11. All right, now that's up to 11. All right, so we kind of already sidetracked a little bit, but I think the thing that's plaguing, myself and Jeremy today is just, and I don't want to say black-pilled. I don't want to say, down in the doldrums, even though my coin rack just fell off the wall and almost crushed everybody, maybe that's an omen too. Maybe something else needs to go back there. Who cares about my coin rack, right? That's the past. We're about moving forward and trying to do the right thing from this moment forward, this moment in time and going forward. And I think by way of introduction, the reason why we want to sit and talk about evil and how evil is walking around, evil is just boldly walking around and it's rubbing your face in it. I mean, so some other things have just come out, in the news recently, and the FBI, politicians, they're busted lying left and right. They don't even care. It's just what are you going to do about it? It's a level of of confidence. It's a level of,
it's a dangerous arrogance almost.
well, it is. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, arrogance, it's, you know, I mean, arrogance by itself is dangerous, but yeah, it is a level of arrogance. But it's arrogance, as we were kind of saying in the pregame, it's an arrogance born out of a confidence. It's like, what are you going to do about it? You know, you guys aren't going to do anything about it. And that kind of is where we want to go with this podcast here tonight. So there's going to be we're going to kind of appeal to if you're watching this podcast, we will have some appeals for you here tonight, because at the end of the day, and maybe this will be the other title, and you look at, you know, I've got an Edmund Burke quote going on in the ticker. There's so much truth in that. If we as the men and women of the West, if you want to say it that way, right? And it's not, I don't mean anything disparaging against anybody from the East. I'm just saying, you know, if you know, kind of our Constitution and our freedom and everything kind of emanates from the West. So that's really what I'm just trying to get at, right? You know, this kind of way of looking at the world and looking at humanity and morality. And it's not saying that, you know, like, you know, Eastern countries don't have like a different senses of morality and are equally, you know, just and supportable. I'm just saying, we as the people and who are watching this video in today's day and age, if we don't do something about what's going on around us today, well, then, I mean, Jeremy had a great way of saying it. Well, then at the end of the day, we're the culpable parties.
Yes.
Or how did you say it, Redbeard?
Yeah, no, we're basically culpable in our own demise. I mean, it's been a long-standing thing where even our founders realized, like, look, if we become ignorant, if we become debauched in our manners, we don't have to worry about threats from the outside, because there will be internal issues from within that are going to develop themselves and tear this country apart. And the focal point of that is, if we become ignorant and debauched of our manners, essentially, if we become stupefied and degraded of our morals and in our compass of direction, and I would even appeal the lamplight of liberty, you know, it's like, at what point do we continue? And it's not saying that the bureaucrats are not culpable in this. They very much are, because most of them know what they're doing. Some of them may not, but we also have gotten so lackadaisical and lazy in pursuing any form of recourse or consequence that we now, you know, we now are in the situation that we're in. So that's,
well, and, you know, there'd be some people would argue, well, what is the situation we're in? You know, everything's fine. That's, you know, black pilled type of conversation, or that's like sensationalism and it's over dramatic. And you know, and I just even the headlines today, and the headlines from yesterday, it's just more of the, you know, and what we're going to talk about here a little bit. Matter of fact, here, why don't we just jump right into it and let that conversation flow naturally, right? So the premise of the argument, or the premise of the conversation, is that evil exists. It's walking around outside. It's walking amongst us. It has no fear at all right now. It's out there flaunting itself. As Jeremy said, it's like a dangerous arrogance, but I would say it's an arrogance based on confidence. It's like, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to do a damn thing, right? Well, and that's where, you know, matter of fact, Jeremy, that's why I was saying Men of the West. There is as much as I don't like the new Lord of the Rings movies, there is a great scene where Theoden gives his battle speech in the Pelennor field outside of Gondor. Maybe I'll find that clip and I'll throw that in there because maybe we need a little Theoden King, you know, kind of rallying the troops here. But because evil is just out there and it's not scared, right? And hopefully Jeremy's right, and maybe that's out of arrogance, and maybe we can use that to our advantage.
And no, I was just going to say, and like, with this being said, I evaluate, like, what we're going to get into, Mark, is not so much an appeal to, you know, also help us, or to help other people that are trying to do stuff, or even to help yourself necessarily, because I think that's kind of a given. We all have to work together to kind of make this thing happen and stem the tide of all this stuff. But I would look at this as more of like an appeal to liberty. That's what I look at it is. It's a genuine appeal to liberty. It's not about me. It's not about Mark. It's not about necessarily even yourself, although as individuals, we do matter, but it's an appeal to liberty. And to the extent that if we do not stand up for liberty today, then we are essentially laying these chains upon our future and our posterity, and placing this because if we're being honest, like many of these issues have been placed on my generation and even Mark and many other generations that have come before us, to where, well, it's not that bad right now, so we'll just get to it down the road. No, at what point do we man up and become adults or become grown women and tighten up our boots and say, no, this stops here? And I would even make the appeal to, like, if that means up to and including the loss of very dear things, then is it worth it if you know that your children can live free? Is that worth it? Because to me, that's worth it. To me, to see my nieces and my nephews live or exist in, even if it's not entirely free, but in a much freer world than what I've grown up in and what Mark's experienced and what many other people haven't experienced, if it means a better world, then I think it's worth it.
Well, I honestly, when you first kind of, like, again, I know it was rhetorical, but when you first, threw that out there, when you first posited that question, to me, that was like, oh, that's rhetorical, because the answer is, well, of course. I mean, like, that's a no-brainer. Like, that's a duh and or obvious kind of question. Look, so I'm 55. I'm trying to like run a business. I'm trying to just, do my thing in the world. And if I had to go back to sleeping in the mud and carrying a ruck every day, which would be a really small ruck with not a lot of weight in it, but if that's what I had to do to make sure that, your generation and the generations, that future generations could actually be free again, well, then if that's what I have to do, then that's what I have to do. If I lose my business, if I've got to subsist on, frickin', grass and MREs, whatever, imagine, whatever you don't like eating. If that's what I have to do, of course, that's what I'll have to do. Right. Because it is worth it in the long run. And that matters more than my selfish personal needs and the right here and right now. And that's really interesting that you brought that up, because that ties into, and I don't know if you did that intentionally, but if you did, good job. And if you didn't do that intentionally, even better job, because that really ties into what we're going to talk about here. Like, the whole point, this appeal to everybody's, what, I don't know, Jeremy, do we call it a civic duty or a sense of nationalism or pride, or do we even just break it down into your selfish needs for survival, like your survival instinct? Because even if you take it down into the most primal, individualistic, like, I'm only concerned about me, I got mine. Well, then you got to be in this fight, because if not, there isn't going to be I got mine. There'll be like, no, you're going to do whatever you're told to do, and you're going to eat your bugs and like it and live in a little 8x10 room. That's what you're going to get. So if nothing else, if you're looking at it from even that selfish perspective, well, then that's a very strong motivator, to tell the truth, and then you should be looking and saying, okay, well, I don't want to do that. Well, then I better get off my ass to make sure I don't ever have to eat bugs, and I don't get, I want to be able to do what I want to do. And if I want to continue doing that, then I better stand in the, once more into the breach, dear man, so. And
I would
go ahead.
I would make the point too, that, a lot of people, I think, have this, they have the starting point and ending point, and what people don't understand. And I know that this is very unappealing to people, but liberty and your rights and things like that, very, very important natural things that we have, they need to have it's got to be a perpetual defense. It's not like you start and you're like, okay, this is our end goal, and then once you reach that end goal, like, okay, now we don't have to do this. No, like, that's not the case. Like, if there were ever more and more critical time, it's when you feel that sense of accomplishment, and then they're like, great, we can restart all this crap all over again, and we'll just do it incrementally. Like, right now is there is no better a time to make a case and to stand up for what is right and is moral and is and in what I would assume or at least propose is liberty oriented, than now, because it's apparent, it's all around us. It's what's more dangerous is once we've achieved it and we have a sense of liberty and we have a sense of freedom, and there is that quiet, that's when the conspiracies really start to collude, and they start to manifest, and you don't know about it because you're so fulfilled in the sense of complacency. And we see it most especially when you have, and I am picking on conservatives and Republicans here, but when you see these people like, oh, well, my congressional district or whatever just passed this, and like that gives us leeway. It's like, okay, and you're doing what to keep this moving forward? Like, you're so caught up in the idea that you want a victory that you're not even seeing the long game that's already lost because you don't have enough foresight to continue that push. Like, it's an incremental step to furthering liberty, but it's not the only step. It's not the end step. It has to be continuous.
More importantly, you said this, and I don't know if you saw me smiling and then you said it, and then I kind of laughed because I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to say it. But it's those moments of calm, that moment of quiet, when you need to be most on your guard and most aware, the most vigilant, the most outspoken. You know, I mean, look, the simple fact of the matter, boys and girls, is we're so far behind the power curve right now. Like, matter of fact, so in our little bit of pregame, we only just talked for just a few seconds before we hit record tonight.
Pretty much.
It's because the bottom line is, and I'm not trying to sound black-pilled, I'm saying we are losing. Evil is winning this fight right now. And, you know, so just the events of the last 2 days since we shot the last video. Yeah. Again, I don't want this to come across like, oh, well, it's all over, give up. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying the exact opposite. But I am pointing out what I think is a harsh reality, which is we are getting our asses kicked on a daily basis by evil. And that goes to Jeremy's point of everything he just said. And that goes into why we have Edmund Burke, you know, in the ticker. And that is the purpose of this video. It is an appeal. It doesn't have to be an appeal to Mark and Jeremy and Mission Critical Podcast. Right. We are going to make a very specific one here in a second, but you have got to look yourself in the mirror and say, whatever happens next, whether that's tomorrow, at the end, next week, next month, next year, you know, like these, whatever happens, that's on us. Yeah. If we don't do stuff, and God dang it, I really do fear we're right on the edge. It's almost too late, but we've got to get up off of our hands. You know, no more sitting on our hands. And there is a new set of rules. The evil has laid out a new set of rules, and they're playing by it, and we still are playing nicey nice. Yeah, those days have got to end. Now, Jeremy, before I come into like, you know, what compelled that whole like thought process and getting into like the conversation I had last night, you know, and do you want to add anything to that, or where do you want to go with it?
I do actually, and I think it's very pertinent, and I know that, you know, we've talked about this quite a few times, but I hate it, and I shouldn't even say I hate to harp on it, but it's so pertinent because look, we are on the cusp, and I know I keep bringing this up, and it might annoy some people, and I understand that, but we're on the cusp of another forever war. And for those of you that don't understand what this means for us, what it means is literally the raping, pillaging, and destruction of further liberties. If we get involved, and this is an appeal that I would strongly encourage everybody to at least consider. If we do not recoil ourselves from the cusp of any form of conflict over in Eastern Europe or anywhere for that matter, if we do not make a motion to stay out of war, we will, if you want to talk about an onslaught and an attack on liberties and rights beyond what we've already seen, just wait. Because the last time we got embroiled in a forever war, we had the Patriot Act, we had the NDAA, we had many, many other forms of legislation and all of this absolute arbitrary garbage that overnight, mind you, this overnight absolutely defiled rights and liberties of Americans. And it was all done under the guise of national security, for the betterment of the country, for your own interests, for, we need to purport a strong national defense and in this fake faux sense of patriotism. And it will happen again, because once something works effectively and they understand it works effectively, they will continue to use it until it loses its luster. And I think it's very, very important for us to not get caught up in this idea of like, oh, well, these people must be bad, so we must go fight them on their own soil, because if we don't, they'll surely come here. Well, is that true? Or is it realistically them being like, well, if we don't do this, but what we're really trying to tell you is we just want to disarm you and strip you of any real liberties or rights so that we can further subjugate you. Like, history doesn't lie. This is, wars.
It just repeats itself.
Yeah, it speaks for itself. I mean,
yeah. And it repeats itself over and over. And we are, not to go down that rabbit hole. Let's bring it back over to, what we're doing. But 100%. Jeremy's point, I just want to add one thing, which is, you're talking about another forever war. I mean, Jeremy, we're still in the forever war, so it's just a continuation of the forever war. And again, and if you just look at some of the rhetoric that's come out over the last couple of days, you can see that it's in the vested interest of the powers that be, not me and you, not the American citizenry, not, not for real peace, in our world and our fellow man. No, it's for the powers to be. I mean, you can just see the rhetoric is already being spun up again. But we'll save that for a little bit later. But I mean, Jeremy, I think you're absolutely right there. And that is a good appeal. And I hope people do take that to heart. And, again, hit pause. Hit pause. Think about what Jeremy just said. Come back and then get back into the conversation. And then that's going to, and that's where we're going to go with this, getting back into the heart of it. And that's part of the whole thing. So you're saying, okay, well, you guys are just talking a lot of smack right now. What are we going to do? Well, what we're trying to do right now is, again, the podcast. This is still something. This is still trying to move the ball forward. We are trying to, whether it's, 1 yard at a time, whether we get lucky and we get a 10-yard pass or, a 30-yard run, whatever it is, you got to move that ball. And that ball, you got to move liberty downfield. We got to keep moving this ball forward. We have to start speaking out. And again, and the deck is stacked against us. So, just a few videos ago, we talked about, the algorithm. Last night, I talked to the winner, not of this hoodie. This hoodie is mine. There are many like it, but this one is mine. And so we were able to finally connect on the phone last night. We ended up talking for about an hour. So, Rob 151, he's the winner. And through the course of that conversation, I always want to be better. I've never met Rob before. I've never had a beer with him. So I just started asking questions. What do you think about the podcast? Here's some areas where we want to improve. Here's some areas that we think are going well. What are your thoughts? And we had a really great conversation. I would really love to be able to sit and have a beer with Rob at some point in the future. But if nothing else, I mean, I now at least know from just that phone call, hey, there's a guy out there someplace who hopefully is doing good things in his community, with his friends and family and the people around him. And there's hope, right? So before I get into this whole thing, it already started off a little negative, but don't forget, you're not alone. We do that. If you're watching this episode, you are part of the resistance. And my brain's in a completely different kind of place here tonight and didn't really do the standard intro, but you really are part of the resistance, and you are not alone. There are, in my humble opinion, I think there's a hell of a lot more of us out there than there is evil. But we're not as vocal. We're not as organized. We just want to go about our daily grind and not be bothered. And that is exactly what evil is banking on right now. And evil is banking on that and is so arrogant or so sure of that's what's going to happen, to the point we're already raising. It's out there just like rubbing your face in it. Oh yeah, no, I'm doing this. I'm kicking, I'm kicking vets out of this, and all more people coming across the border, and illegal this, and the FBI, like, yeah, screw you, Congress. We're just going to do what the executive branch. It's so obvious what is going on out there right now. And then to the point that Rob and I were having in conversation, it's this conversation. Well, he and I talked about it, but it's this conversation that we are all having together.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this podcast absolutely sucks and our beards are just too awesome for people to look at and they don't want to watch these podcasts. But it's so obvious that the algorithm is we've already been identified, right? And I'm talking about the podcast. I'm also talking about my personal business. I mean, the numbers, it just doesn't lie, right? It doesn't add up, right? And numbers don't lie. 2 plus 2 does not equal. Yeah, 2 plus 2 does not equal potato. It has to equal 4. Unless you can give me a different scientific, or mathematical equation or formula that shows that 2 plus 2 does equal potato. Well, when that math comes out, then I guess when it's proven and we all realize how wrong we've been in our whole lives. Well,
in that case, it changes everything. So,
yeah, exactly. And that changes everything, right? But so to one of the points that Rob was bringing up, he was talking about the algorithm and how, YouTube, anybody Google, anybody, Meta, Facebook, you're already so far behind the power curve. If you don't have the right speak. Doesn't matter that you have the right to speak. You have to have the right speak, right? And there's so many different flowery ways that people obfuscate or condone or encourage this type of behavior. And again, just look at what's happening in the 48 hours since our last podcast. And if whatever news outlets you go to, if you don't see 20 examples of what I just said, you're probably looking at the wrong news. You're probably looking at mainstream media, and and to include Fox is mainstream media. You got to get out there and start doing some better research. But to Rob's point, and this is what I'm going to bring up. Who are we, right? Well, I think I know who I am, right? Jeremy, knows who he is, and I think I know who Jeremy is based on my, interactions, and hopefully you kind of get that sense based on this podcast. But to the overlords, the people who run these platforms, and who we are is we're evil people who need to be destroyed, who need to be shut up. And again, these aren't my words. These are their own words. These are their own statements. You can wordsmith it and put a word salad around it and say, which has already happened to us. Right. Oh, we removed your video. Oh, after further review, after I filed no, we didn't do any of that. Show me where I violated your TOS. Nobody said any of those things. Oh, well, we realized we made an error. They didn't make an error. They can just now sit there and say, no, we did not, ban the video. They were able to put the video back up. Yeah. That's all designed to break the algorithm because, the video, again, for just little old nobodies was, it's going this way and then it gets shut down. I had this happen over on Centerline Systems too, right at the very end before we came over here and started doing this. And it's the same bullshit. So Rob had some great points. And look, I'll be the first to admit, this isn't my space. I'm not super familiar with this. I'm trying to get better at it. Hell, I'm only just now getting comfortable being in front of a camera and talking to a bunch of people. This is such an anathema to my previous, life that I led for a decade, So I'm pretty happy that I'm able just to be here and have this conversation with people. I could do it in person, all day long, but on the internet, this is what got you killed, right? So you never did this kind of stuff. But he had a great point. He's like, look, it's one thing if people like the video, but people have to comment on the video. Now, Jeremy and I have been talking about this because we actually really appreciate and enjoy the comments that people are leaving. But to Rob Mac 151's point, it's not just leaving a comment. It's also then going to another person's comment and then liking or responding to that comment. Now, I don't know if if this is 100% true what he's saying, and if you're a smarter person and you got a better suggestion, my number's all over my website. Or leave us a comment in the comment section below on this video. But the bottom line is we have to start trying different things. Again, if only 40 people watch this video, or like the last video, 40 views and 8 comments. Well, that view to comment ratio is unbelievable, right? That means we're doing something right, or the people watching this are adamant and passionate about this subject matter and freedom as much as we are. But we've got to do more. Otherwise, who can we blame? We can only look ourselves in the mirror and say, did I do everything I possibly could have, to push the ball of freedom, forward, what did you call it, Jeremy? The something of liberty.
The flame of liberty.
Yeah,
Or
you got to keep the flame of liberty going, right? We got to keep this
that
ball
torch
moving.
lit, man.
So Rob's point was, not only do you, Mark, he was like, Mark, not only do you have to get people to comment, you have to get those people who comment or anybody else to actually comment on somebody else's comment. That will help generate more, and then the algorithm sees that differently. So there's the first appeal. If you are watching this video or any of our previous videos, heck, I don't even know if this would work. Go back to our previous videos and comment on every comment that's on there. Leave your own comment, and then do a comment to everybody else. Now, something I was thinking of, like, well, there'd be a way to, you know, if you comment on somebody else's comment. So let's say I made a comment to Jeremy and I say, hey, Redbeard, you know, here's what I think about the Fourth Amendment, And then Susie comes in and then gives a comment to me. Now, Susie could say, Mark, you missed Jeremy's point. Okay, that's great discourse. That's one way of doing it. Or Susie could come in, or anybody else could just come in and just, I don't know, a phrase, freedom, liberty, you know, whatever you want to say, but something that communicates to everybody else watching, like, oh, there's no need to respond. We all know what you're trying to do. We're trying to get that algorithm working. We're trying to get that. We're trying to break through the unintentional, air quotes, big air quotes, throttling that's happening to, again, we're just nobodies, but look at all the other people that you probably do follow who are doing this for a living. And look at how much, if they go off reservation, you know, how much they get, you know, in trouble, and how much, you know, they get throttled down, or they're shadow banned. Oh, but shadow bans don't happen. Oh, really? I think the whole Twitter, you know, files proved that that's just a bunch of bullshit too. Right. So another reason not to trust, you know, government and, you know, and CEOs. But so that was one appeal right there. So we're at 30 minutes. Leave a comment right now. Mark, Jeremy, that'll never work. And here's why. Okay, well, because again, help us figure out how to break through that ceiling, how to break through the algorithm. So to make it, let's make YouTube and the communist evil overlords, let's make them be the ones who are working harder, right? Let's make them keep trying to push the, you know, liberty under the surface, and then watch liberty just keep popping up everywhere else around them, because, you know, we've got to take it upon ourselves. We have to. It's incumbent upon all of us to take it upon us, the responsibility upon ourselves, to actually start standing up for freedom. Or to Jeremy's point, or then you're just going to be looking at the mirror one day, and your mirror won't be a nice mirror. It'll be like a little sliver of tin from something in your concentration camp / work re-education program camp, you know. And then, you know, the Prime Minister of New Zealand will have that shitty looking grin on her face and say, "Oh, you'll just have to spend more time in the camps." You know, that's where we're heading. They just won a major victory for almost 3 years, and they know it, and they're still moving in this direction, and that's where we're going. And we're seeing it even right now on our little silly little podcast. There's no way in the real world, or maybe it is very different now. Maybe there's just so much content out there, but I'm just not feeling that. I mean, not based on what we're seeing, what we were getting for views, the number of comments that we get. Something just isn't right in Dodge, and it isn't Jeremy's beard or his love of, you know, certain weapons platforms which are inferior to others,
which shall not be named according to Mark.
Yes, exactly. All right, so Jeremy, you want to add to that, or do you want to go for that? Because otherwise, then I'm going into the next little segment.
Yeah, so what I kind of want to add to that, and it may segue into kind of what we're going to talk about as well, but to that point, and this might actually be somewhat of a divergent but relevant still. You know, so Mark was kind of talking about, like, okay, like instead of us just sitting here kind of bitching about it, you know, like, how do we make a difference? And so we kind of, you know, explained a couple different ways that, you know, not even to our benefit, just the idea of creating a better environment in which, you know, there is a barrier between tyranny and liberty. And to that, I want to explain also, you know, like, how can we defend against it, but how can we have preventative measures? How can we start to affect change? And this is something that I don't know, Mark, I've probably explained this about 100 different times, or brought this up 100 different times through the duration of our conversation, but it starts with the community. Like, one, get to know your neighbors, get to know your neighbors in a genuine sense, invite them over for barbecues, get to know the people that live around you, and get a sense of who lives around you. Moreover, invest in your communities, invest in the small businesses, take an interest in supporting your communities, build those communities. And then in addition, learn skill sets, provide maybe not necessarily free services, but get skilled enough to offer some semblance of barter. Because if you want to talk about undermining a very bad economic situation, you stand to benefit if you have a tangible service or a tangible skill set that you can offer to your neighbors. And more than likely, go ahead.
No, I just had to throw this in. You just raised a great point, and I'm calling an audible right now. So that's something that I'm just here for the record.
Yeah.
And Jeremy and I will figure out how we're going to do this. Like we said, we're not going to do Tuesday podcasts, but maybe every other Tuesday or something like that. Maybe we'll find, and through people who are leaving comments. And Jeremy, so the classes I used to teach, it's not the best using this format. Isn't as good as hands-on.
Yep.
There's nothing that says we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now with 4 other people and going to, because what you were just mentioning about like the barter system and all these other skill sets. Well, that's one of the classes right there, the first 72 hours or the 72 hour, the next, or the 72 hours after. So whether it's that or whatever it is. So there's one of the pledges. So Tuesday nights that where we're not doing this, it can't be every Tuesday because again, I'm burning the candle a little bit too brightly right now, but why not? Why not every other week? Based on what people, if somebody leaves a comment, says, I want to sit in and participate in a class, again, I wish it was in person, but this is the best we could have, then I'm willing to do it. I mean, to your point, Jeremy, because a lot of the subjects you just said are a lot of the points that I bring up in those 2 specific classes right there.
Yeah,
so
100%. And even to further that point, right? Like we realistically have to start getting, like, it's not enough to just elect somebody. And I've said this before, like voting is not a fire and forget thing. There needs to be follow-up. We need to be involved in our government. That is literally how this whole thing came about. It was an expectation as a responsibility for us to be involved. So look, if something happens in your city and you voted no, and they were like, well, whatever, we're going to do it anyways. Are you going to follow that up with something and be like, no, you're not going to do this, and this is why you're not going to do this, and if you don't do that, there's going to be X, Y, and Z consequence. Look, if you're not doing that,
to that point, I just got to throw this in there because I'm sure other states do, but our state is horrible for this. They'll put a referendum out there on during a voting cycle where they know a lot of people aren't going to go to the polling booth, right? Because it's local elections, whatever. But they'll put it out there, and it'll be if a vote yes is a vote yes, a vote no is a vote no. But if you don't vote yes or no, we automatically make that a vote yes. That's underhanded bullshit all day long.
Yeah, like it needs to be counted as is.
It's either a yes or a no, and if somebody didn't abstained and didn't cast a ballot, well, then that's not a vote. But
it's not consenting.
Jesus.
Yeah. So look, like that,
but hang on. So I'm sorry, because now I'm really getting pissed off because this is where we as a society, as a country, as a nation, have allowed ourselves. We've allowed ourselves to be either led down or forced down this path, and here we are. Like the moment some politician said, well, I've got a great idea, like we'll just put this on the ballot, and we've got enough people in our party to make the rules, like, and then if you don't vote for it, well, then that's a vote for us. Right then and there, that person should have been removed from office. Like, 100%. No, Mark, that's bullshit. That's not how it works. It's a yes or no. It's an upper, period. That's it. No, but we didn't do that. We didn't do it. And now it's almost too late. How are we going to get out of that now?
And I feel like we need to harken back to, and I know I bring this up so much, but back in the day, the 40s, 50s, 60s, what was one thing that was common in neighborhoods? Well, the commonality in neighborhoods, for good or ill, was people used to have book clubs in neighborhoods. They used to get together at each other's houses. They literally, grassroots movements happened in the basement of Mr. Bailey's house, and shit got done by average people. Yeah. Where the fuck is this happening? Pardon my French, but
well, it's happening. Hopefully it's happening right here, but unfortunately, you can invite me and 10 other people to your basement, but with this, and because this is our basement now, and it's controlled by evil people. Now there's so many barriers. We can't even find the 10 other people who want to listen to this or want to come over to the basement for beer and sandwiches and talk about this.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, like in the end of the day, maybe we have to go old school. That's why I keep telling people, dude, get out, meet your freaking neighbors, because the three neighbors, if you have three neighbors, even if one of them doesn't believe the same thing as you, then you have two other people that might be interested in that. But it doesn't mean you have to treat the other guy like shit, because you being nice to that person might win them over to your side. It might be the difference between having somebody that diametrically opposes you, which is always a possibility, but you might be able to bring people to some common ground. And it's like, dude, like, resistance was born in the basement of people's houses. And there was born in
I want to say resistance was also born in the Green Dragon, in the bars and the pubs.
Bars and pubs and stuff like that, right? Like, in the end of the day, like, where was it born? It was born, built in communities that were established by the people that lived there. What we have provided is too much power in the say of government officials in dictating how our communities are run, instead of them maintaining what we have built in our communities without going too far. And it's like, dude, like, again, going back to that thing, like, if they're just like, oh, well, we're going to allocate $100,000 to, maintaining the park, and then all of a sudden 75,000 of that is missing. Okay. What, dude, like, if you're upset about it, but you're not actively going out and being like, dude, like, we're going to audit the crap out of you. And if we find out that this money is going missing or is not being allocated in the areas that it needs to be, and mind you, which we can do, we can bring an independent auditor in instead of a government auditor and be like, look, I want to see the books. And if you're not going to allow us to see the books, then
you don't get any more money.
Yeah, you don't get any more money.
Yeah, and then you're out of this year's budget. Watch how quickly that would just end things. And hey, but we're getting a little too curious.
But that's how you affect the change, though. To answer that, like, if people want to know how to affect change, that's how you do it. Like, and don't be afraid, because if you start doing it, somebody else might see it, and they might be like, I didn't know somebody else felt the same way. And they might come out of the woodwork, and somebody else might come out of the woodwork. And like Mark said, I'm inclined to believe that there are more good people out there than is purported to be. And I'm just going to put one quote out there, and it's by Dostoevsky, which is, to live without hope is to cease to live. I'm a very hopeful person. I'm a realist, but I'm a very hopeful person that there are good people out there. But I feel like without a sense of hope, we lose that sense of life, and that's what they count on. They want you to die inside, and I refuse to do that. So I yield to you, Mark.
Well, so something I say all the time is hope is not a method, and hope is not a method. However, hope is what keeps us alive. I mean, it is that light of liberty. Yeah. Hey, so I'm going to wrap this up on my side, because I think we've kind of made the point. But the last thing I want to say at the end before I turn it over to you for the outro, and any closing comments you might have is, so we're making, again, what are we really asking? Are we asking of anything of people tonight? Yes, we are. Yes. You all have done a great job leaving comments. Continue to leave comments.
Yes.
But then comment on other people's comments. Or if you know a smarter way to break the algorithm, then leave a comment or call or email or something. I mean, it's all there. But let us know. But then, damn it, because otherwise, then if we lose this fight, and we're right on the cusp of losing this fight, then, and I don't mean just like Mission Critical Podcast. I mean us, people who believe in freedom. If we lose this fight, I mean, can we really blame them? They're not even hiding what they're doing anymore. They're telling us like, oh no, I'm totally fucking with you. I'm totally trying to do this to destroy your way of life. And you guys are too stupid to do anything or say anything about it.
Right.
So if you want to win, if you want freedom to succeed, if you want that flame of liberty Jeremy was talking about, help us do that. And the one way, according to Rob Mac 151, comments, and then people commenting on other comments. So that's one thing. And then from our side, because I don't think this is our podcast, I think this is really, like by ours, I mean me and Jeremy. I think this belongs to all of us. And so we're going to try something in the future here. We're not going to do it next week. Next week we have a guest on, and that's the only day they can be on, and it's going to be a little earlier in the day. But 2 weeks from now, I think that's our tentative date. We're going to try our first live stream. And it's not really, again, I don't even want to call it a live stream. I want to call it an hour stream. So we'll do a live stream. But if you're leaving a comment and you've got something great to say, I'm not sure, we'll have to figure it out who's going to moderate, maybe I'll be reading it and Jeremy will be talking more or something. But then I have the ability right now where if I saw a message from you, I could message you directly, just you. Hey, that's a great point. Do you want to come on the live stream? And if you say yes, I'm like, okay, shoot me your email. Here's our email. Shoot me an email and I'll send you the link and we'll bring you on. And then you get 5 or 10 minutes to expound upon or explain what you just said over in the chat section of the live stream. So I think that's something that I really find exciting. I did this once at Centerline Systems. We were just doing a test live stream because I wanted to make sure I could even do it. And a bunch of people somehow knew I was doing a live stream. And next thing you know, they're there. And I'm like, hey, do you want to come on the live stream? And they're like, okay, sure. And then we started talking. So it was a lot of fun from my perspective, but it also really, I think to what we're really trying to say is like, you are the resistance. I know it's we're having 100%. Fun, but like, it is true. You are a part of this fight. And so if you're going to be here listening to us knuckleheads, then why not come and join us and and add your voice to this and share your thoughts, whatever the subject is. But I think that's what we're going to try 2 weeks from now. We're going to try a live stream. We already know what our subject is going to be for that night. And we'll talk about that in next week's podcast. Because we might have to tweak it a little bit based on how next week goes, but we'll mention that next week, and then we'll figure out the time. Jeremy and I normally shoot these videos at 1600 Central Time. Maybe we'll do it at 1700 that 2 weeks from now, because maybe that would work a little better from a live stream perspective. So just stay tuned. But that's something else that we're going to try to do, because we're not joking. This is serious. I know Jeremy takes this to heart. I know I take it to heart. If you're watching this podcast, you probably take it to heart as well. This is our country. This is our lives. Freedom isn't given to us by the D or the R that's sitting in the office. And we need to really stand up now before it's too late. And I'm trying not to be black-pilled here today from some things from the last 48 hours, but man. Boy, we got to rally the forces right now, because Sauron is at the gates of Gondor, and if Gondor falls, it's all over, and the Dark Lord wins, and that's unfortunately how close I think we are to the edge. So that's all I got, Jeremy. What do you got?
Basically it's just on a closing point here. Look, get educated, get active, and get engaged. That's all.
On that note, we will, and during the live stream, I'm sorry, on the Get Educated, my pledge, we will start to try to figure out how to do a separate thing on Tuesdays, and we'll maybe announce it. We'll figure that out too. But and if you want to come in and take some of these classes, again, for what it's worth, you might think I'm a knucklehead and, why would you want to listen to me? You're probably right. But I do have a little bit of a background in these areas, and look, I don't care. I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything, and I hope you're the same person. And even if I talk for an hour and you only learn one thing, well, guess what? You still learn one thing.
Educate, activate, and engage. Those are the three things that we need to focus on if we're going to continue to gain momentum to start to fix a lot of these issues that we face. So on that note, Mark, I'm going to bring it out. I just want to say, look, the flame of liberty shall not and will not be extinguished so long as good people exist and we are willing to support and defend liberty till our last breath. And that's what it's going to take. So with that being said, I hope you all are having a great week. I hope you've enjoyed our episodes, and I hope you'd enjoy our podcasts. And on that, I bid you farewell.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. All right. Everybody be good. God bless. See you later. Take care. Woo!